Rave TikTok and social media reviews for Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, One Battle After Another, have been pouring out by seemingly the thousands over the last couple weeks as the film has been released and had some pre-screenings. And I want to talk a little bit about whether or not this film is being overhyped on social media, or if it does in fact live up to the explosive reviews, and what social media in general is kind of doing for movies in this hype fashion. So One Battle After Another is Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film. I'm a major fan of Anderson. I've seen every film of his he's made in the theaters since 2007's There Will Be Blood. And each time I see his films, I have different reactions to them. He's a very elusive filmmaker to your expectations. He's not somebody that, like Wes Anderson, the other Anderson, makes sort of expected movies each time. Paul Thomas Anderson has a way of making one movie and you expect him to kind of do it again, and he just doesn't. He takes a complete pivot. And this movie is definitely a pivot from the rest of his filmography. And I've found that when I go see his movies in the theaters, sometimes I immediately respond with love and like a complete obsession with the film. And there have even been times where I've been frustrated or not happy with his movies at first, and have had to have time to kind of allow them to digest. He's definitely a full meal type of filmmaker where when you sit down to watch his movies, there's so much going on, there's so much to unpack with it that sometimes it kind of wallops you over the head and you need a little bit to come to your senses before you can fully understand what you've seen, draw your conclusions, and get a full taste of what you just experienced. And I think that might be the case for me with One Battle After Another. It was certainly the case for me with his last adaptation of a Thomas Pynchon novel, which was Inherent Vice. I actually walked out of the theater when I first saw that movie. And as I've said, I'm a big fan of Anderson, and I come to love every one of his movies. And Inherent Vice I did a complete 180 on and enjoy it. But this one is very different and isn't really a true adaptation of the Thomas Pynchon novel which inspired it, which is the novel Vineland. And I'm currently reading that, and I think smartly he uses it as inspiration, but doesn't make it feel like a full-blown adaptation, which is what Inherent Vice was. The Inherent Vice literally felt like a Pynchon novel on screen. This feels like some of the plot elements, but he abandons a lot of the, I'll say, harder to follow elements that are signature to Pynchon's writing. And what we have with this movie is a very fast-paced, very energetic movie that's easy to follow, actually, and is pretty much on the surface very exciting. And what I think I'm feeling since seeing the movie just a few hours ago, my brain is still kind of formulating its opinion here, and I think I am partially talking about it for the reason of getting more understanding, is that I think this one falls into a category that might have more surface level excitement and less of the sort of deep, nuanced character things that some of the other Paul Thomas Anderson films that we come to expect him to create have. Most notably, The Master. The Master is really complex. That's another one I didn't really love when I first saw it, and now it's one of my favorites of his. And but that one takes a long time to kind of see the subtext of what's going on between the relationships in the film. That I didn't quite grasp at first, partially because that movie has some incredible cinematography, some of the most beautiful, I think, ever put on screen. This film, cinematography-wise, I was immediately jarred by the fact that it is not a pretty looking movie. And that's something I've come to expect from Paul Thomas Anderson, is a really, really strong visual style, a really remarkable use of the camera and cinematography. And this one feels almost kind of rogue and almost, I hate to use the word sloppy, but it's very, you can tell, precise, but the results aren't quite as like mantelpiece art painting. You know, this isn't one of those like every frame is a painting type of movies. This is a grittier, more art house type of filmmaking that I think is a really interesting turn for Paul Thomas Anderson. And as I said, with him sort of subverting expectations every time with his movies, I think it's the right move for him to make with a movie, instead of giving us our typical pretty Paul Thomas Anderson movie. That being said, I think there are times where the movie could look prettier. I just think, there's times where it's so gritty that it's just, for me, I love the Paul Thomas Anderson beautiful aesthetic that I felt like throughout this movie I was missing a little bit, and that's fine. And I think as time goes on, I'll forgive this more, and I'll be a little less like worried about that, and that will be this movie, and the next one will be whatever else he does. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing being criticized about this movie is the characters, which I also have still, my brain is still trying to wrap around. A lot of people are saying the characters are not likable. And I think one thing is that I don't find them not likable. I think they are likable. I just think one of the things that surprised me is, because this movie is so fast-paced, you miss the really close, intimate character work that you typically get with a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. If you go back again to The Master, or if you go back really early to Magnolia, those are all character driven. The film is slow, and it's about the conversations or the monologues that are going on. This movie very rarely gives us time to even have good character building conversations. The conversations tend to be more like exposition. They tend to drive the plot forward more so than any other film he's made. And when one of my favorite moments was earlier in the film when Leonardo DiCaprio is interacting with his daughter, and she's being picked up by her friends to go to the school dance. And you really get some of that fun character building work that Paul Thomas Anderson is signature for with that scene. That was a moment I was like hoping there'd be a few more of those moments, and there are a couple more of those moments in the movie, but was very different for me to not have the movie anchored in those sorts of conversations or character building moments. The action is really well executed in this film. There's a early on, I think it's like a bank robbery or something that happens, where the revolutionary characters go in and they accidentally kill somebody, and it leads to this high stakes pursuit. And that might be the highlight of the film for me. I thought this was so well done. I thought the timing of it, you felt the tension, so real. And what I love about this movie is the action is sloppy, and it's not a clean car chase. The cars are hitting each other and getting banged up in the process, and it adds to the real momentum of something like that, as opposed to a slick James Bond style car chase. And I thought that moment was like really one of the coolest moments I've seen in a movie in recent years. It was just something I'd never seen before, but yet you feel like there's been so many car chases in movies. Why hasn't one done it like this before? That was the highlight. That there's also pretty standout car action towards the end of the film too, that I won't give too much away, but that those are really well done. And the sort of running around chaotic tension that Leonardo DiCaprio's character experiences throughout the movie is really fun too. Doesn't quite feel as tense, like you don't quite feel the same level of stakes with it. It feels a little more goofball just because his character is goofy. Leo is fantastic in this movie. So is Sean Penn. So is Regina Hall, and all the other supporting characters. Everybody's giving a fantastic performance in this movie. A lot of people are pointing fingers at Sean Penn to be nominated or to win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for this, talking about how he is one of the great movie villains of this era. And I was, because again, the social media hype was happening, I started to sort of formulate what I thought this character was going to be in my brain before seeing the movie. And I think that was a disservice, because the character is really smart and well written. And but because of that hype, I was almost like finding myself disappointed with it in the moment, because it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I think that's one of the frustrating things with all this social media hype when it comes to a movie like this. When it comes to a big old blockbuster movie, a big superhero thing where everybody's just gonna go and shove popcorn in their mouth and love it, I'm like, yeah, hype the fuck out of it. I don't care. When it comes to a director like Paul Thomas Anderson, whose movies need time, they need you to not really go into them expecting all these things, I think it really disservices the movie. And yet I like that people are hyping the movie, because it's going to get people in the door to see it, particularly in theaters, which is where it needs to be seen. The movie has a $130 million budget that is not recouping the ticket sales to make back the money, which is a little worrisome for the future of movies like this getting made. The fact that this movie got made at all is pretty much a miracle. And a lot of it comes down to Leonardo DiCaprio's box office draw. But Leo is picky about his roles, and he makes great films, but we want to make sure that the box office stays high so that he can continue to attach himself to these projects, and they can continue to get made at the level that they're getting made at. So very important to see this movie in theaters, and the people on social media who are hyping this movie up, bless them for it. But as a viewer, I say you should try and remove all of that stuff before going in and seeing this movie. The best thing to do would be to see this movie completely cold, with no knowledge of what it's about, who made it, anything like that, because that will probably be the best experience for you. Ultimately, it is a roller coaster ride that I am still digesting, and I think it will have years of life, and will be one of those movies that's talked about in 5 to 10 years and look back as a classic and the movie of this year. And these movies are getting fewer and far between. I mean, the last year that movies were really phenomenal was, I think, 2018 or 19, when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Parasite came out. And they just are not making movies like this anymore. The directors that we love, they're either retiring, they're dwindling off, they're not doing what they used to do at the speed. And now, really, we have Paul Thomas Anderson, we have Quentin Tarantino, and Scorsese. Occasionally I will watch his movies, although they're getting quite long for me and a little bit like all over the place. I really enjoy Sean Baker, and I will see every one of his movies in theaters, but I don't quite think Sean Baker's made a movie on the caliber yet that in terms of like the production, having big stars and big budgets and things to work with quite at the level that Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson have. So we all want to preserve Paul Thomas Anderson as a filmmaker and ultimately give this movie lots of love and give it grace and hope that it won't be overhyped and then people will then turn on it and be mad. You know, you told me it was a good movie on TikTok and then I saw it and I got mad at it because it does need time. And I felt that the film Sinners this year was also very, very overhyped on TikTok. And I enjoyed the movie a lot, but the things that people were saying about that movie to create sensation was so like a caliber almost unattainable. And that's what this is doing. And it's the nature of social media to sensationalize things and to make things, you know, pop out the screen so people don't swipe away. And that is not the fault of the people trying to make these reviews on there. And it's the duty of us as viewers to detach all of that. So go see One Battle After Another in theaters. I really hope this movie takes the Oscars. Paul Thomas Anderson has yet to win an Oscar, which is, I mean, not surprising considering Tarantino's movies have never won Best Picture. Stanley Kubrick never won Best Picture. It's like, what the fuck are they ever thinking over there? I don't even know. And they give it to some movie like Nomadland. And you're like, what the hell is this?